Welcome to the deep dive. So, if you're like millions of people trying to navigate, your digital security, you've probably hit this question, maybe wrestled with it. Which VPN service should I actually pay for?
Hmm.
It comes up all the time.
It really does. And we dove deep into some source material on this, a really robust, pretty heavily debated critique that's been shared a lot in security circles. And what we found wasn't like a top 10 list.
Yeah, right.
It was more like a complete dismantling of the whole industry promise.
That's right. Yeah, the answer we kind of pulled out is deliberately provocative. It's blunt. Just don't use commercial VPN services.
Wow. Okay.
So our mission today really is to dig into why. Why does this, extreme position exist? What are the technical arguments behind it? And crucially, what do the sources suggest as alternatives if you are security conscious?
Right. And we need to be super clear here. We're not throwing out the whole technology, are we? This isn't about VPNs in general. Not at all. No. The source material, it started as this really active GitHub gist, got translated into Russian, Turkish, other languages. It really focuses its criticism on the third-party commercial providers.
You mean the ones you see advertised everywhere, promising total anonymity for like $10 a month?
Exactly those. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're using a VPN to securely connect to your work network, your company's internal systems, that's totally different. That's, the intended use case. Still valid.
Okay.
We're talking about using these commercial services as, well, the source calls it a glorified proxy.
Okay, let's unpack that. A glorified proxy. If I'm paying someone to encrypt my traffic, route it through their servers, how is that just a proxy? And why is that necessarily bad?
Well, the fundamental argument is this. The second you sign up with a commercial provider, you're basically just swapping out one middleman, your ISP, for another.
The VPN provider.
Right. And that provider sits right there between you and the internet. They can see all your traffic when it leaves their server to go to the final destination. And they absolutely have the technical means to log everything. Every site you visit, everything you do.
Okay, but hang on. This immediately bumps up against their biggest selling point, right? The no-log policy. Everyone shouts about it. You hear people say, oh, but I use a reputable provider. They've even been audited. Surely they can't risk getting caught logging, can they? The scandal would kill them.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how the source tackles that exact point.
Yeah.
They really stress that the whole no-log promise, it's completely unverifiable.
How so?
Well, think about it. You, the customer, you have zero way to actually confirm they're following that policy. Zero technical mechanism. And, more importantly, a provider who is malicious or one who's just lying to get your business. They'd make the exact same claim, wouldn't they?
Okay, yeah. Good point.
So the only safe assumption, according to this critique, has to be that every provider logs. Assuming otherwise, that takes, well, basically blind faith.
And the sources go further, right? They suggest they don't just log, but they actually have a strong financial reason to log. That seems counterintuitive for a privacy company.
It does, but it comes down to risk. Self-preservation, really. Imagine the provider gets hit with a legal demand, maybe from a big movie studio over copyright, or a law enforcement request.
Okay.
Logging gives them an instant out. They can point the finger directly at you, the customer, deflect all the blame. They protect their own network, basically, by hanging you out to dry.
That's a pretty brutal calculation. There's a very cynical line in the source material about this, isn't there?
There is. It really puts it starkly. They say something like, the 10-month that you're bitching for your VPN service doesn't even pay for the lawyer's coffee.
Ouch.
So when faced with a potentially expensive legal fight versus handing over your data, the provider's going to cut their losses. You should absolutely expect them to hand over records if they have them.
And what about that market pressure argument? The idea that a scandal would destroy their business. Does that hold water?
The sources say no. And they point to a specific case. Remember Hide My Ass?
Vaguely, yeah. Something about logs.
Exactly. Years ago, they got caught turning over user logs in some criminal investigations. It was pretty widely reported, especially in tech circles.
Right.
But the source points out, despite that huge breach of trust, despite it being public knowledge, the company is still around, still in business today.
So what does that tell us?
It suggests, well, either most users just don't know, or maybe they don't care enough. Perhaps convenience and flashy marketing just outweigh proven integrity for a lot of people. The market, it seems, doesn't really police this stuff effectively.
Okay, so the trust model, the logging. It seems pretty shaky according to this critique. Let's shift to the technical side. People use VPNs thinking they get security, encryption, anonymity. The sources say, nope, not really. Let's start with security.
Yeah, the security claim is very narrow. Basically, a commercial VPN only secures the connection from your computer to their server. That little tunnel, that's secure.
Okay.
But the moment your traffic leaves their server and heads out to the actual website you want to visit, it's just as vulnerable as if it came straight from your house. All you've done is move the potential interception point. Instead of someone sniffing your local coffee shop Wi-Fi, they sniff the traffic leaving the VPN's data center.
Got it. And that ties into the encryption myth, doesn't it? I turn on my VPN, I feel like everything's wrapped in this unbreakable code. Why is that wrong?
It's wrong because the VPN only encrypts that first leg of the journey to itself.
Ah.
Think about it. Let's say you visit an old website, one that still uses plain HTTP, not HTTPS.
Okay, yeah. There are still some out there.
Yeah, right. So your VPN client encrypts the request, sends it securely to the VPN server. The VPN server then decrypts it, sees the request, and sends it off to that insecure HTTP website in plain text.
So the VPN provider itself sees the unencrypted request.
Absolutely. They have to decrypt it to know where to send it. From their server onwards, the traffic is exactly as secure or insecure as it would be without the VPN. It can't magically add encryption if the destination doesn't support it.
Which means, as the source puts it, the provider can see and mess with all your traffic that isn't already protected by HTTPS.
Precisely. They are the termination point for that initial encrypted tunnel. They see the contents. That's the critical point of trust or potential vulnerability.
Okay, what about anonymity then? Lots of providers push paying with Bitcoin, cash, prepaid cards, anonymous methods. Surely that helps, hides who I am.
That's another great example of what the source sees as misdirection. Paying anonymously. It's largely relevant to the core issue. Because sure, you hid your identity from the payment processor. Fine. But you haven't hidden it from the VPN provider itself. The moment you connect to their service, how are you connecting?
From my actual IP address.
Exactly. Your real home IP address connects to their server to establish the tunnel. And you have to assume they log that connection. Timestamp your IP, the VPN server IP you connected to.
Yeah. You pay them anonymously to supposedly protect your identity, but the very act of using the service you paid for reveals your origin IP to them anyway.
It's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah.
That connection log, your origin IP, that's the easiest link back to you, the anonymous payment. It's mostly a security theater, according to this view.
Okay. And the last big promise. Confusing trackers by hiding my IP. We used to think sharing an IP with hundreds of others made us invisible. Is that still effective?
Not so much anymore, no. The source argues the IP address itself is becoming, quote, largely irrelevant for modern tracking.
Why is that?
Well, partly because of things like CGNAT, carrier-grade NAT.
Right. That's where the ISP forces a whole bunch of customers to share the same public IP address anyway.
Exactly. So if maybe dozens of households are already sharing one IP address, using that IP alone to pinpoint one specific person, it doesn't work so well anymore. So trackers, marketers, they've adapted. They've moved on.
So what are they using instead, if not the IP? Things a VPN can't hide.
They're using much more sophisticated stuff. Things like your browser's user agent string, sure, but more powerfully, browser fingerprinting.
Fingerprinting?
Yeah, it creates a profile based on all sorts of tiny details about your specific browser setup. Screen resolution, installed fonts, browser extensions, even how you move your mouse sometimes. It builds a unique identifier, a fingerprint.
And a VPN changes my IP, but it doesn't change my browser's font list or screen size.
Exactly. Your fingerprint stays the same. The VPN does nothing to mask those unique details that distinguish you from everyone else using the same VPN server.
Okay, so if the tech claims are shaky, the trust model is broken. Are there any times, according to the sources, when using something like a VPN makes sense?
Yes, they do concede two very narrow scenarios, really specific situations.
Okay, what are they?
First one is if you're on a network you know is hostile.
Like public Wi-Fi at the airport, or some random cafe where someone could be sniffing traffic locally.
Exactly that. Places where a man-in-the-middle attack on the local network itself is a real risk. In that case, encrypting your traffic out of that hostile spot to a trusted exit point makes sense.
Okay, that's use case one. What's the second?
The second is hiding your IP address from specific, and this is key, non-government sanctioned adversaries.
Yeah.
Meaning things like, say, trying to get around a ban in an online game or a forum that banned your IP, or maybe trying to avoid those copyright infringement scare letters that some groups send out based on IP seen in torrent swarms, things where the opponent doesn't have state-level resources.
Right. But even for that second case, the source isn't keen on using a full commercial VPN, is it?
No. Even then, the recommendation is often just use a regular proxy, and only for that specific traffic, like route just your BitTorrent client through the proxy, or just the game connection. Don't send all your browsing banking email through that same potentially untrusted middleman.
Keep the exposure limited.
Exactly. Minimize the footprint.
And yet, despite those two sort of niche exceptions, the overall takeaway from the critique stays really strong. Basically, just don't use a VPN provider at all, even for these cases.
Yeah, that's the blunt conclusion. It comes back to that trust and verification gap.
Yeah.
So if you absolutely need that kind of IP masking or hostile network protection, the only solution the sources really endorse, the one that addresses the trust issue, is, well, you got to do it yourself.
The DIY approach. Okay, so this involves getting a VPS, a virtual private server, and setting up your own tunnel. Talk me through that. What's a VPS first?
Sure. So think of a VPS as renting a small private slice of a big server in a data center somewhere.
Yeah.
You get root access, administrative control over that little virtual machine. And the recommendation is to install your own VPN software on it. The sources mention tools like WireGuard, which is known for being modern, fast, pretty simple, or Streisand, which is more like a suite of tools designed to set up servers that are harder to block or censor.
Right, I've heard of WireGuard. But, okay, if I run a cheap VPS from some random company, maybe one I found on a site like Low End Talk, isn't that just trading one provider I don't trust for another? Doesn't the VPS host log everything too?
They might. Yeah, they absolutely could. But there's a key difference, sort of a statistical advantage and a control advantage.
Yeah, so?
Think about who uses commercial VPNs. They specifically market to people worried about privacy, people maybe doing sensitive things. That whole customer pool is, statistically speaking, more likely to attract scrutiny from law enforcement, copyright holders, governments.
So the commercial VPN provider is basically painting a big target on its back, saying interesting traffic here, making it potentially more likely to be a honeypot or heavily monitored.
Exactly. Whereas a generic VPS provider, they mostly sell to developers, small businesses running websites, people hosting game servers, just generic infrastructure. You, setting up a personal VPN on one tiny VPS, you blend in more. You're less likely to be part of a targeted group.
You're just random noise on their network, not part of the main event.
Kind of, yeah. Plus, you have control. You install the software. You manage the keys. And crucially, you can destroy it. Spin up a VPS, use it for a week, tear it down, spin up a new one somewhere else. That ability to control the setup and destroy the evidence easily is something you never get with a commercial provider.
That really does shift the risk model, doesn't it? From being a self-selected, privacy-conscious user target to just some person renting computing resource.
And you gain that element of control and, to some extent, verifiability over your own setup.
So if the tech is flawed, the promises are hollow, the alternatives take effort, why are these commercial VPN services everywhere? Why the constant ads, the aggressive marketing?
The source gives a really simple, maybe cynical answer for that.
But just
because it's easy money.
easy money? How?
Well, the barrier to entry is pretty low. You rent some cheap servers around the world, you install some standard software like OpenVPN or WireGuard, and then you resell that bandwidth, often at a huge markup, like 10 times what the bandwidth actually costs you.
Wow.
And the kicker is they can make, quote, every promise in the world about privacy, security, logs, because nobody can verify them.
So the fact that you can't verify their claims isn't a bug, it's the core feature of the business model.
That's exactly the argument, yeah. The source wraps it up by calling the whole commercial VPN industry, pretty harshly, 100% snake oil. It benefits the provider, gives them recurring revenue, while making users feel secure, even though they've just shifted their trust to a different third party, one that's arguably even less accountable than their ISP.
Okay, this has been, well, definitely a necessary deep dive, even if it's a bit unsettling. So, to quickly recap the main points from the sources. Commercial VPNs, basically just proxies. The big promises of security and privacy, undermined because you can't verify logging policies, and the tech itself has limits, like where the encryption actually stops, and trying to hide your IP for anonymity. Modern tracking, like fingerprinting, often makes that less effective than you might think.
Yeah, and if we sort of zoom out, the bigger lesson here isn't just about VPN tech specifically. It's about how incredibly hard it is to actually verify claims in the digital world.
Right.
What this deep dive really highlights is that your privacy, your security, it often boils down to who you fundamentally choose to trust with your data. And maybe, just maybe, the only system you can truly verify is the one you actually control yourself.
Which leaves a pretty big question for you, the listener, doesn't it? When you look at all the digital promises out there, security apps, financial tools, whatever, which ones can you really verify? And what hidden costs, like maybe loss of control or unverifiable trust, are you accepting just for the sake of convenience?
Something to think about. Until next time.